between countries or even within our country are pretty serious issues. And if you get too far out of whack on that, then you get a divide and you don't get the fluidity and the sense of opportunity that this country has stood for. So I think we've really got to renew our commitment to the ideals around equality, and I think there's a lot of actions that suggests we should be taking to invest in the long term that certainly at this stage we're not taking right now.
I can't say it better than Bill, but we got lucky tickets in life. I mean, we got a ticket that said American, we got a ticket that said intelligent, we got a ticket, that said that this time rather than 200 years ago when the same talents would not have produced much. So we got a very lucky ticket in life. A lot of people don't get lucky tickets, We were over in China together 10 years ago, and we saw some people that wouldn't make any difference what their brain power was or anything else. They weren't going to have a chance, at least for a long, long time. I think we've got to do a much better job of not only taking care of the people that get the bad tickets in this country, but in doing what Bill and Melinda have done, which is going around the world and helping those people have things that we regard as absolute, givens in our society. I mean, Bill has taken vaccines to people around the world that die at very young ages and families that get destroyed and all kinds of things for things that we could do something about. Those are the things that we should be working on in your generation.
Hello, I'm Jared Carlson, senior management major. My question is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
One superpower? Bill, you think more about that than I do.
I don't know. Extending one's lifetime would be a reasonable thing.
Yeah, I'll take notes if you have anything to say.
I don't think being able to get rid of competitors, that wouldn't be much fun. That'd be like hitting a hole-in-one all the time. No. Being able to read super fast, that'd be nice.
That'd be huge. Well, Bill can read. So I mean, he reads about 3 times as fast. And just think of, I mean, I probably wasted 10 years reading slowly. But, no, if you talk about granting a wish, I mean, what you would, with the type of thing, I mean, what you really would hope is that somehow you could reduce the threat posed by nuclear knowledge in the world. I mean, that's going to be the great problem of mankind in your lifetime. And the knowledge is out of the bottle. The genie's out of the bottle on that. And you have a lot of evil people in the world. And then the question is, how do you prevent intent of evil people coupled with knowledge, which has now gotten more widespread, to interact in a way where huge amounts of damage are done to people throughout the world? And I think that's the most intelligent thing to work on philanthropically, for example, but I don't know how to do it very well. We do a little, but that's, that would be the wish. But the reason it's just kind of a dream is because the problem is so tough.
I do think there's some very basic things around giving them an allowance at a young age and sticking to that and having them decide, okay, you want to buy a candy bar today, that means you can't buy one in the future, and start to figure out that there are real limits. I do think we're lucky that our children will get to go to Africa and Asia and see how people live, and even from a young age understand that the United States is statistically an aberration, that the lifestyles we have, we should wish that many decades in the future that the world at large can live in these same ways, and hope that people treat them in a normal way and treat them for what they're actually good at. That would bother me a lot if they were being approached because somebody thought they could influence something. It's an awful thing. Every kid should be evaluated based on who they are and what they're doing.
Our kids are rich or going to be rich by the standards of the world. They don't think they're going to inherit a significant portion of the fortunes of either of us. I mean, 99% of what I have, it'll go to philanthropy one way or another. And Bill has the same attitude, basically, that we are not going to turn out some super wealthy kids. They'll be wealthy. I mean, there's no question about that. And but the idea of dynastic fortunes, you know, I find it turns me off. I mean, I don't think it's what America's about. I don't think, if you talk about equality of opportunity in this country and really having everybody with talents having a fair shot at getting the brass ring and all of that, the idea that you hand huge positions in society on simply because someone came from the right womb, you know, I find that, I just think it's almost un-American.
My name is Matthew Bodie. I'm a senior from Elgin, Nebraska. Several Eastern European countries have successfully enacted a flat income tax, and now there is growing pressure in Western Europe to do the same. Would you support the United States adopting a flat income tax, and why or why not?
Well, I wouldn't support it. You'd be amazed how flat it is already. If you look at both the payroll tax, which is over 12% now, and that applies on the first $80,000 or $90,000 of income. So Bill and I pay practically none of that in relation to our income. The people that work for us, it's a big tax. So if you take the tax that my assistant or anybody in our office pays, they've got 12% on that first $80,000 or $90,000, and then they have the income tax. And their tax rate, literally, in many cases, is not, well, it's the same and maybe even higher than my own tax rate, since they cut the rate on capital gains to 15% and dividends to 15%. So what has gone on in this country in the last, well, in very recent years, is a huge benefit to the very rich, and not that much relief to people down below. And people, when you read about tax rates, they usually leave out the payroll tax, and they don't refer to this 12 and a fraction percent. So we have come, in my view, to a taxation system that's much too flat in this country, and frankly, I think that Bill and I should have a higher tax rate on the income we get. We pay a lot of taxes, but it's really at a very low rate, and it's a rate that's less than half the tax rate that I was paying 25 years ago when I was making a lot less money. They have really taken care of the rich.
Yeah, I go along with that wholeheartedly. I think we probably need a more progressive system as we look to balance the budget, that at some point I think people recognize that needs to be done. Probably one of the ways that will be done is that the rich should bear a somewhat higher proportion of the burden than they do today. Very large fortunes never go through an income tax. Maybe it's a little ironic, but both Warren and I would say things in several aspects of the tax system should be more progressive.
I could spend the rest of my life, and I could have done this 20 years ago, and actually pay no federal income tax, because I could have taken my Berkshire Hathaway stock, borrowed some money against it every year to live on, and when I died, you know, then the estate would pay off the debt on it. But I could have gone through my life, a good bit of my life, without paying any income tax whatsoever. And I frankly think it's very unfair.
Hi, my name is Dan Senft. I'm a senior finance major. My question is, the Forbes 400 puts your collective net worth at $91 billion. By comparison, that figure exceeds the combined gross domestic product of the bottom 70 nations in the world. How do you feel that your immense wealth contributes to the balance of global prosperity?
Yeah, well, the wealth, in effect, is a bunch of, I mean, the